Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Divorce-a-Palooza. What exactly is a high conflict divorce? Some people describe it as a battle, a stressful time filled with anger, resentment, hate, a time when kids are put in the middle, and when they see the ugliness of their parents fighting, both in court and at home. And that's what I want to talk about today. A high conflict divorce. We have lots of great tips if you just were listening to that and thinking, this sounds like my life. And my guest is divorce attorney Erin Bodendorfer, and Erin is a partner with Katz and Stefani. Hi, Erin.
Jackie, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. So I want to tell everybody watching that Erin has been a divorce attorney for 12 years. She's been at Katz and Stefani the whole time. She's now a partner. And Erin, you deal with a lot of high conflict divorce, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so what does that look like in the cases? Because you probably have some cases that aren't high conflict. So what's the difference when it comes to your clients?
I'd say the main indicators of a high conflict divorce case is a lot of litigation going on. So, a lot of motions being filed, a lot of time spent in court, and that is the result of the parties being unable to reach agreements either between themselves, between their attorneys, or in mediation that requires them to go to court on a lot of matters, either financial matters or child related matters. And as you mentioned, I think most high conflict divorce cases, you will also see a lot of disagreement, a lot of anger, a lot of emotion, and a lot of the children are being put in the middle of the case or in the middle of, disagreements that maybe don't need to be occurring.
Okay, yes, I was gonna say, it comes home with them. So
Yeah.
what they're fighting about in court comes home, and the kids start to see it, and maybe the couple's still living together, and they can't even look at each other, and it's just, what it sounds like, high conflict, both in court and at home, and it's really, really sad. Now, there's a statistic that says only 8 to 15% of divorce cases are considered high conflict. What does that mean? Like, how does somebody say it? What's the criteria for being in that statistic?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think a lot of people who are not really in a high conflict divorce may feel that they are because all divorce is stressful. Even if you're in the most amicable divorce case, um, it's still going to be stressful. There's still going to be conflict because you're getting divorced. But those high conflict cases are just going to be, there's never an agreement, right? It's not that there's a few issues, but there's never an agreement. No one can agree on what day it is most of the time.
Right. And
And
it goes on for a long, long
yes,
time.
yes. And once you start in that litigation process, it takes a long time to resolve things in court, and that's one of the reasons that it does go on for an extended period of time. One, because there's no agreement on anything, and two, because the court system takes time. They have a lot of matters they're dealing with, and it takes time to work through that process.
Okay, let's get to some tips for people who are watching this who feel like I'm in this category. I'm in a high conflict divorce. The first tip is make sure you're seeing a therapist and or a divorce coach. So what you're saying is get emotional support.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you need that, and you're going to hear so much advice from your friends, your family. You don't want your divorce attorney to be your therapist. They're there to give you legal advice, and you need mental health support as well because it's a very difficult time, and you need to be able to be there for yourself, for your kids if you have kids, and get through it. And that's imperative.
So I don't really know if I was in a high conflict divorce. So I got divorced in 2007 or 2008, both years actually. And, I don't know if mine would have been statistically high conflict, but what I do remember is I was in tears a lot, almost on a daily basis. There was a lot of litigation, a lot of things. And so you're right. I needed much more mental and emotional support than I got. I was seeing a therapist, but I think a divorce coach would have been a game changer because it's very different than therapy because divorce coaches kind of hold your hand and help you make the decisions and put you in the right frame of mind to be a little bit more agreeable and to get the divorce done quicker. Do you agree?
Yes, and also, a lot of people that maybe they were going through marriage struggles and they had a therapist and that was a good individual therapist for them for those issues, but now they're going through a divorce and they're in a high conflict divorce and maybe this therapist is no longer the best fit for these issues and they may need someone more experienced. So either a divorce coach or a therapist that better meets their needs at this time, which could change over time and what season they're in.
Okay, next tip. Don't put anything in writing to anyone that your ex might be able to get a hold of. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, just it could be on social media, it could be emails you're sending friends, family, their family. When the divorce starts or before the divorce, you think everyone's, maybe on your side or your friend or your family, but as things go on, especially in a high conflict situation, you kind of see where the cards are going to lie. So you don't want to be putting information in writing that your ex can get a hold of and then may use against you in the case or otherwise.
Very, very good tip. Next tip is protect your electronic information. What's that all about?
Yeah, just emails. I've had high conflict situations where client spouses were hacking into their emails, viewing attorney client privileged information. So you want to make
Wow.
sure that your email's secure. Set up a new email account if you think your spouse at some point had access to it. Change the passwords. If you see you're getting alerts that someone's trying to authenticate to get into your accounts, be concerned about that. Maybe that's a trigger you need to change your email address. Same for social media, same for text, iMessages, iPad, everyone's on the same family account, same, iPad. Make sure that your information.
I've heard a lot of stories like that, Erin, where people's exes read from an iPad and that's how they found out about affairs, and also, like, don't you think, Erin, if somebody is in a high conflict divorce and they start dating someone and the ex sees the messages, even though they're not cheating because they're already getting divorced, it's going to infuriate the person so much, it's going to make the divorce way worse.
Yes, it just adds to the conflict. I had a situation exactly like that. An iPad that was going back and forth with a child. Somehow my client's messages got logged into the iPad. It was a high conflict situation. His spouse started reading the messages. They'd been in the divorce case for years. At that point, I'd say, he's entitled to move on with his life, but she was reviewing messages between him and someone he was dating, and it definitely added more to the conflict that was already occurring at that.
Maybe it's the same person that we know. No. Okay. All right. Next tip is get a credit card or credit cards in your own name if you don't already have them. Open a bank account in your name and try to set some money aside in your own name. Why do that?
When you're in a high conflict situation, a spouse may use some kind of financial abuse or manipulation to try and control the situation further, such as cutting off access to funds. And while attorneys or, individual litigants have the ability to go into court and request relief, you just always want to make sure that your spouse doesn't have that much control over you that you're just going to be left one day without access to anything until you get relief in court. So that's why it's important to get your own account, get your own credit card if you can, set some money aside as if you anticipate a divorce, start putting some money aside in your own account so that you have
So
extra.
from the time that somebody, let's say, cuts someone off and they go to court to try to retrieve, get an emergency order that they have to pay, it could be like a couple weeks and then maybe you have no money.
Yeah, definitely. And some
Mhm.
judges, depending on the circumstances, some judges take the position that financial matters are just never an emergency. So, yeah, it could take a few weeks, it could take a month or more in some situations.
Okay, next tip is understand how your case will be staffed. So I think this means that you what does that mean?
Yeah, so it means a few things. So one, when you hire an attorney, make sure I would suggest first when you're hiring an attorney, interview a few attorneys. Make sure you're comfortable. Referrals are really great from, former clients of theirs. And then when you're understanding how your case is going to be staffed, that means who else is going to be working, on that matter with the attorney you're engaging. So is there going to, if you're hiring a partner, is there going to be an associate? Is there going to be another partner? Is there going to be a paralegal handling discovery matters? And what other possibly outside experts or consultants do you need to bring in? And it's just good to know that ahead of time and make sure that that's all being put together in a timely manner. So you may need an appraisal on a home. You may need a financial advisor, you may need a tax advisor. If there's issues related to the children that are high conflict issues, you may need other professionals either appointed or brought in to address the issues that pertain to your children or the issues that pertain to your spouse as it relates to your children.
Okay, Aaron, if somebody hires you, you're a partner. Do you tell them, like, I'm going to represent you in court, but I'm going to give a couple of associates some of the work to do? Like, is that what we're talking about here?
The first part, yes. So, and sometimes that's done for a few reasons. One, sometimes it's more cost effective, right? The partner doesn't need to be handling every matter in your case, organizing discovery documents, requesting documents, putting them together, drafting simple motions. So just understanding who's going to be working on your case. Yes.
Okay, and then the second thing you said about all the different professionals that you might have to hire, like an appraiser and all those, is that something that gets billed to Katz and Stefani and you add it to the bill? Or is that something you say, okay, you're going to need to do this and it's going to be like separate bills? Or is it just a combination of those things?
Yeah, typically it's billed separately, so the client would pay those experts or other consultants or other professionals directly and separately. And so I think that's why it's a good idea to know ahead of time because most people want to understand the financial cost and it may just not be their attorney. If a few months later they realize they need a business valuation expert that could for a marital business, for example, that's a significant expense. And it's good to know those things ahead of time. What other expenses your attorney anticipates you having as you move forward, and when and how they need to get engaged in the process.
Okay, we have time for two more. So I was just kind of looking ahead, and one of them I really liked is keep a journal as it relates to issues that arise with the children.
Yeah, I
Why
like
would
that
someone do
one
that?
a lot. So, and I have a lot of clients do this, particularly in a high conflict situation, or if we're concerned we're heading into a high conflict situation. Sometimes you don't always know at the beginning, but a lot of times, someone doing something one time isn't necessarily like a huge issue in the case. If your spouse is doing something as it relates to your children, repeatedly, that's when it becomes an issue and your attorney really needs to know. But it's hard to, especially when you're in a divorce and there's so much going on, it's hard to keep track of that. So, for example, your kid never gets their homework in the nights they're with the other parent. Okay, once you're going to call your attorney and let them know. But you want to keep a record of it. You want to make sure you have that record of when that parenting time was and match it up with when the homework wasn't being done. And it's much easier to do that contemporaneously with what's happening than 6 months later and your child's failing their classes to try and go back and figure that out. So keeping the journal as it's happening, just with any parenting concerns or issues that you have, so you can go back to that later.
Okay, so there's several more tips we have here, but we have time for one more. What do you think is something really important that we haven't touched on?
I think one more I'd want to make sure I say today is to consult with a financial planner. So if you already have one that's independent of your spouse, but if you have a family financial planner that's with your spouse, you're going to want to get referrals for an independent financial planner, and you're going to want to keep them in the loop and consult with them from time to time as your matter progresses and you begin to understand how different assets splits may occur and different options for payments of support and how that's going to look, so that in addition to receiving skilled legal advice, you're also receiving some financial planning expertise if and when needed.
And I know that Katz and Stefani and you, Erin, do work and talk to financial planners about somebody's case. So, certified divorce financial analyst is a good person to hire while you're going through a high conflict divorce because they'll actually talk to Erin or someone else, your divorce attorney, and you know, kind of come up with different scenarios. If we do this, here's what's fair, here's how much they have. So, really, it's very tied together. And I want to let people watching know that on Divorce Girl Smiling, there are four financial advisors who are vetted and extremely trusted who specialize in divorce.
Yeah,
So,
in
eh,
addition to those professionals as well, if there are unique financial components in your case, you want to make sure that your divorce attorney as well has a very good understanding of those issues. So if there's business valuation issues, if there's executive comp, stock options, restricted stock, if there's any unique financial piece, you want to make sure you have someone that understands that and who can bring in other professionals as needed, that they have that experience and those connections to know, hey, we do need those other financial experts for this issue now as well.
Erin, thank you so much for taking time to be on Divorceapalooza. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jackie, for having me. It was a pleasure.
And I want everybody watching to know that if you're thinking of hiring an attorney and you want to talk to Erin, you can reach her at katzstefani.com. You can also find Katz and Stefani in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.
Thank you, Jackie. Talk to you soon.